So, welcome to our learning community. Our topic today is leveraging existing university services and systems, particularly in the area of admissions. We always start with the land acknowledgement. On Minnesota, we are on the rightful homelands of many Dakota nations and multiple other indigenous tribes. And we just like to recognize that the U.S. did not uphold its land treaties, and it is because of the current displacement of peoples that allows the state of Minnesota and the University of Minnesota to exist where it is today. Affirmation of commitment. We are part of the Institute of Community Integration, and we just want to affirm our commitment to address all systemic ableism, racism, and all other forms of inequity and forms of oppression to ensure inclusive communities in the future. We have two guest speakers today. We have Joni and we have McKenna. Joni is the director of undergrad recruitment, and McKenna is in charge of integrated studies and runs the runs the inclusive higher ed program at Millersville. So I am just going to hand it off to them.
So thank you so much again for having us. We're super excited to be here to talk a little bit more about navigating university admissions processes, specifically to help support students with intellectual disability through the admissions process. And we just wanted to start by having you put in the chat what brings you to this MyHack webinar tonight, whether you're a family member, a student looking to go to college, whether you are affiliated with an inclusive higher education program or a university. We have information both for students and families and for IPSI staff. So we'll kind of tailor our information towards who's with us in the audience today. So like Katie said, I'm McKenna Killian. I'm the Director of Integrated Studies at Millersville University. We are an inclusive higher education program for students with intellectual disabilities, and this is our 10th year. So we are super excited to be able to share our admissions process and some of the highs and lows throughout the way of developing a really seamless admissions process for our students. And then I'm also joined today with Joni Klopp. Joni, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Joni Klopp. Thanks again for having us this evening. I am currently the Director of Undergraduate Recruitment at Millersville University, going into my 13th year in public enrollment management here in the state of Pennsylvania. So I have the pleasure of working closely with McKenna as it relates to our processes. I'm also currently the president of the Pennsylvania Association of College Admission Counseling. So I have the distinct pleasure of working with folks on every single side of the college admission space, whether that's high school students, parents, independent counselors, you name it, just making sure that all students have that next step available to them, whatever it may look like. Thanks for having us.
All right, and I see in the chat that we have a good mix of people. We have a parent with us, a higher education staff person, a community organization member. So we'll give an overview of what the admissions process looks like for all of those different parties involved. But this is just an overview of our session for today. We'll talk a little bit about integrated studies, so you can hear more about the program and our initiative at Millersville. We'll talk about the admissions requirements for integrated studies specifically, along with our new and improved admissions process. And then we'll also offer some suggestions both for inclusive higher ed staff and for students and their families that are looking to go to college. So like I mentioned, Integrated Studies is an inclusive post-secondary education initiative at Millersville. We are a 4-year certificate program, and we're fully inclusive. So all of our students' classes are taken with degree-seeking students. Our students are able to live in the dorms with their degree-seeking peers. They can join clubs and organizations on campus, attend campus events, and then all of our students are working either a job on campus or off campus in the community. Currently, we have about 15 students in the program. And as you can see in these images, they are very involved and they have a wide variety of interests on campus. So I could speak all day about the program, but it's really best to hear it from the students. So this is just a quick video that we were able to film this year where you can hear from 3 of our students and the work that they're doing at Millersville. Integrated Studies is an inclusive post-secondary education initiative or a 4-year non-degree program for college students with intellectual disabilities. Once they get to their 3rd or 4th year in the Integrated Studies program, that's when they start their internships. And those are really focused on whatever career they want after they graduate.
I'm basically just an intern at TELUS. I help out with setting up stand-up shows, basically observe people like when they do sound or helping out at the front, like doing tickets.
Ever in TV and also in the show, it's kind of like it's sports talk and stuff like that.
In terms of like my internship, like at the MU Help Desk, I learned how to rebuild a computer based on the software side of things.
Uniquely to them, they have coaches. It is academic support, it is social support, and it's of course independent living support and also community support.
Me and my coach Keith is Brett. We are really great friends, and we're trying to plan another basketball game, which I might beat him.
All of our students live on campus, so any housing opportunity that is offered to a degree-seeking Millersville student is also offered to our students.
I get to drive to like the grocery store, drive to the gas station, cook my own meals. Definitely learning to like live on my own. I live with a roommate, and me having friends that started living with someone you know is way easier than one with a stranger.
I love seeing the growth in our students over the course of their 4 years with us. And so it's really cool to be sitting with a 4th-year student who's able to say, you know, this is my future, this is the goals I want to accomplish.
Our big future career would be actually being a sports broadcaster. I really want to be on WTAL and Blue Ridge.
So my goals after I graduate is to further my education and to get a degree in IT. If I could, maybe like have like experience more on the road with an artist, see how the whole thing works and everything, because I think that'd be fun. Because I went to this concert at Capital One time in DC, and I saw like how like a stage used to turn, and then I told my mom like I would love to see how that works.
Happy to report that 100% of our graduates in May already fully employed. And the reason for that is because of our team, the approach we took.
I think that if I support only these days, I think it's also really helpful that they plan for the future, which I really like.
Coming here, and they said it's giving more options, like branch out into like the different kind of areas of what I want to do. I didn't get a chance to learn that when I went to community college. Was thinking about just being like at Millersville for 2 years. As my time grew here, honestly, I'm glad I decided to stay for 4 years. I am grateful I'm able to be part of the United States.
That is just a little bit about us and the students that we're working with. And so all of our students that are admitted into the program have to meet the criteria of having an intellectual disability as defined by the American Association on IDD. And so we'll go through our admissions process today so that we can share a little bit about how we make sure that the process is accessible for students and that we are looking for students that kind of meet these admissions requirements. So the main one being that they fulfill that diagnosis of having intellectual disability. We're also looking for students that have completed high school. And all of our students need to be at least 18 years old before the beginning of the academic year. And then we also cap our applicants at 26. So students in our program when they're starting are between 18 to 26 years old. And that's just to kind of mirror the average age of students that we're seeing at Millersville. Our students also need to be able to live in student housing with limited support. And so for us, this means that students can get themselves up and dressed and ready in the morning, but maybe they need some help learning how to do laundry on campus or learning how to use the microwave in the dorms to make some simple meals or snacks. Our students also need to have basic safety skills in unsupervised settings. We are a fully inclusive program, which means that we do not have 24/7 staff supervision of our students. They are living in the dorms. There's times on campus where they are in the student rec center or they're just walking across campus. So they need to have basic safety skills in order to keep themselves safe while they're independent. They also need to have a desire to be independent, to grow their self-determination, to look for employment when they graduate. And this really helps our students maintain the motivation they need to go throughout the college journey. I always tell students that college is super fun, but it's also super challenging. And so our students need to want to be here and want to put in the work needed to gain those independent living skills. And then we also ask that our students are able to navigate the campus independently. So we have supports put in place so that our students can learn where their dorm building is and where their classes are located, how to get to the dining halls. But in general, they have to be able to safely walk around campus. So in order to see if an applicant meets all of those criteria, we have a few different steps in our admissions process. The first is an online application, and this just collects general information about the student. In addition to the application, they have to submit proof of intellectual disability. So this is a neuropsychological evaluation, a psychological educational evaluation, something that proves that they meet that criteria. And we ask that this is a recent evaluation, so done within the last 2 to 3 years. All of our applicants also submit their latest IEP so that we can see what accommodations and supports they were receiving while they were in the K-12 system. Additionally, our students provide 2 recommendation forms from professional references. So someone like a teacher, an employer, a volunteer coordinator. And these forms are downloaded from our website, and they really speak to how much support students need in different areas. And this just allows us to gather information about where a student is going to need to be supported once they step foot on campus. So maybe students need some extra help in checking their email, or learning how to manage their dining dollars. So these are specific questions that are asked on the form for the references to fill out, just so that we can get to know the student and their support needs a little bit better. And then after all of that documentation is collected, students are then invited to campus and they complete an interview with our Integrated Studies admissions panel. That's made up of me as the director, our faculty advisor for Integrated Studies, and then a few other faculty and staff members from across campus. So previously, our admissions process was mostly done by hand, and it was not included in any way with the Millersville degree-seeking student application. So what we were doing was an online form that was just embedded into our webpage, and then all of those additional documents, so the psychological evaluation, the IEP, the references, those were all either emailed or mailed to Integrated Studies. And so this was a little chaotic. So we had documents coming in several different places, both online or physical copies of files coming in the mail. And then after all of those documents were collected, the interviews were scheduled by email with the student. So this kind of brought on a few challenges for the program. First was that the process wasn't super clear for students and their families because the documents were being submitted in a different place than the online application. So it was challenging for students and their families to keep track of what they had submitted, whether it was received by the program. And so this created just a lack of communication. And then additionally, students were seeing their recommendations before they were submitted to us. So they were asking someone to complete the recommendation form, and then they mailed it with the rest of their materials to us, which may or may not have led to some recommenders not being completely honest because they knew the student was seeing the feedback. Maybe they didn't want to upset the student or their family. And so we were seeing a lot of recommenders saying, oh, the student doesn't need support in any areas. And, that may or may not have been true. It also created a very tedious scheduling process for interviews because we were collecting all of these documentations before we were emailing students to set up interviews. So it just wasn't a smooth process all around. And then as students were being accepted and admitted to the university, because our admissions process was completely separate, they were not receiving any communication from admissions or housing through those automated systems that degree-seeking students were. So it ended up with students missing out on some communications, or maybe they were getting them later than their degree-seeking peers. So because of all of this and all of these challenges, we decided to work really closely with our admissions department to create a new and improved admissions process that is embedded within the degree-seeking application for other Millersville students.
So I'm going to jump in here to talk a little bit about what that process looks like. And I think the timing was really great. McKenna saw the need. Our admissions team has also been refreshed. We have a new enrollment management lead. We also saw the need to pull in our folks and application process as it relates to integrated studies. And so I don't want to get too into the weeds and the technical details, but happy to answer any questions you may have. Where we house our entire application system as a university is a platform called Technolutions Slate. If you are not familiar with the higher ed space, I kind of joke that Slate is the Cadillac model. A lot of folks, a lot of institutions are moving to a company like Slate. It was truly created by a former admission counselor and is very, very user-friendly. You can almost create anything you want to as it relates to the Slate process. So we can go on to the next slide, McKenna, to kind of talk about what this process looks like. And so we have a few different screenshots to share with you tonight. But as McKenna shared, the entire process has truly been embedded into our traditional application for every single student. And so Millersville is very fortunate to have two different ways for a student to apply. That is through the Common Application and through the Millersville application. Having two applications allows us to pull in a department like Integrated Studies because we're able to do that through the Millersville application. For you folks who are working in the technical space, Common App does have some, I'll say red tape. You can't be as specific with Common App. You're kind of buying a model. You don't have too much to edit on that. Having an internal application allows us to make any decision that we'd like as it relates to the process for a student. And so every single undergraduate student, transfer, reentry, integrated studies, honor student, you name a student can use this exact same application, which is what makes the process really exciting for us. As we move to the next slide, this is a true snapshot of our application. And so we mirror our application very closely to the Common App as it relates for data sending purposes and monitoring and reporting and things like that. But we do have the option to customize applications as it fits to select populations. So even, for example, for our degree-seeking students, a freshman application looks very different from a transfer student application, looks very different from a second degree-seeking student application, so that we're able to get the information that we need. And then once you're in the actual application, this is what I was just referring to, where you can see the different types of students that we're able to support through this system. And again, think of Slate kind of at the top, and we're able to create these different branches as it relates to the different populations, which allows us to be very personalized, very specific, especially as it relates to McKenna students who are uploading materials that we may not have here in the admissions office that McKenna needs access to, as well as her panel. And so moving on, you can see kind of what this checklist looks like. And it's exciting because we're going to show another view of this, but this is accessible to the student. And so every single student, any degree-seeking student who is applying here at Millersville University has regular access to what is called, we've conveniently named it the My Spyglass portal. We are the Millersville Marauders. We have a little bit of a pirate theme, if you will. And so we have our My Spyglass, which is a place that students are able to check on everything as it relates to their application. What's also really exciting as it relates to what McKenna shared in the previous section is students also have the opportunity to upload those documents right into the system. The way that we've created this build is, let's say McKenna logs on from home, uploads the material, that is automatically connected to her account in an official form, able to be viewed digitally by McKenna, by myself, by our AVP, and it allows folks who are part of the this process to really, rather than like McKenna said, chasing down files and making sure you have everything in line, it directly connects to the student, which also cuts down on human error. That is something else that Slate really assists with, is making sure that we're able to match everything up in the best format possible. And so this is a little bit of a closer view of the application checklist. What's really exciting about this, we work with a lot of students who say, hey, I sent X, did you receive it yet? Not all of us, for example, I have an entire operations team that handles our materials. So materials don't come to me. They're given to our operations team to then be uploaded into the student file. And so we tell students, you will be able to see in your Spyglass when your document is received and uploaded, which with this generation definitely puts minds at ease, right? Sometimes we send those documents and wonder if we don't hear back right away. Did you get them? Where are they? And so students are truly able to track their process, log in as many times as they'd like to review to see what they're missing. And so what's really exciting too about the portal that we've created for our integrated study students is they also have the opportunity to download a copy of that recommendation form. So again, previously we've been very link heavy, if you will, right? You can download a form here, you can view something there, but once a student logs into their My Spyglass portal with the university, they have exactly what they need to have access to get those forms completed. You can also, as it's mentioned on the screen, as soon as that is completed, we always tell students, look for that bright green check mark. That's how you know that it has been received and it has been put into your file. What I think is, I'm really excited about the application process. I think what I'm even more excited about is how we've been able to really mirror the experience for a traditional degree-seeking student in undergrad, transfer, et cetera, with our integrated study students. And so when I first got here to Millersville a couple years back, it was this piecemeal process. We were having a difficult time making sure our integrated study students who were incoming for the fall were truly getting the communication. As the enrollment management team, our job is to make sure every single student is getting information. And so we've been working with McKenna and her system to make sure that integrated study students are getting tailored information for them. Because of how our programs align, there's a lot of overlap, right? And so we have, for example, reminders on financial aid, reminder when the housing application opens. What's nice about the portal is it is custom to the student, right? And so, for example, McKenna's portal and my portal, even though we may be in the exact same program, may look very different because it is based on the individual student. What's exciting about that too is McKenna has access. We work across campus from each other. McKenna has full access to make those changes on her students' accounts, adding new documents that are required without the assistance of the admissions team based on the way that we've created this process. The other piece is, this is where the acceptance letter lives. This is where the decisions live. We have automated communications every time a file is touched, right? And so if once a student has a decision, hey, McKenna, it's time to log into your portal. There's some news in there for you, right? And so we've created what we call drip campaigns and communication plans that automatically trigger communications for when an action is taken. And so to take some of that off of McKenna and her team for sending those individual emails, those emails have been created for her in-house that we're able to automate and send pretty regularly. The last thing I'll mention on this slide is, of course, all of the big pieces that come with the enrollment process. And so while we always, when an integrated study student reaches out to the undergraduate admissions office, we always refer them to McKenna, but we're excited to be able to also refer them to their portal. In their portal, they're getting invited to our Admitted Student Day event. They're learning information about orientation. We're going to be kicking off a parent webinar that we're going to be sharing with these folks as well. And so really creating some traditional ways of engagement for this population that we weren't able to do previously.
Sorry, lost my unmute button there for a second. So we are super excited about this move into Slate. And so Joni just reviewed kind of an overview of the student side of things. And I just wanted to share a little bit about how this has helped us within the Inclusive Higher Ed program. and what it looks like on the back end. And so this has made it way easier for us to track applications through all stages of the process. So you can see here that when I log in, I can see the number of applications in these different phases. So even if a student has just started an application and it's not even, they haven't hit that submit button at the bottom, I can see in that awaiting submission bin that there is, 10, 20 students that are interested. They're out there, they're starting the process, but maybe they haven't quite finished their application yet. After they hit that submit button, it moves them into this bottom awaiting materials bin. And so this is where students typically hang out for a little bit while they're collecting that documentation, while we're waiting for those letters of recommendation to come in, while we're waiting for their evaluations to be uploaded. And so this just helps because we can see if anyone really gets stuck in this bin. I'm able to see if a student and an applicant has been hanging out here for maybe a month or so. They get reminders from Slate as well, but it also is an opportunity for us to check in with the student and their family and say, hey, is something going on? Are you still interested? Are you having trouble with the system? So it just gives us a little reminder to reach out to those applicants to make sure that they're able to get everything uploaded that they need to. After that, they get moved to this middle top red bin. And so this is where all of our applications that are fully complete, they have the materials, they move to there. And that gives me a cue that it's time for me and the rest of the admissions panel to look at that completed application, to read over their documents, and then invite them for an interview. After the interview process, we can then move students to either our wait list if we don't quite have a spot for them, but they're still a really qualified candidate, to the admit bin if we think that they would be a great fit here at Millersville and that we're super excited to admit them into the program. And then if there's any students that we just feel like aren't the best fit for Millersville at this time, we can move them to our deny bin. So this way of tracking applications has been very smooth, very seamless, and one of the big benefits of moving to Slate. So as students are working on their applications, we are able to view their records. And so this is what it looks like once a student has finished their application. You can see on the right-hand side here, there's buttons to read the application or to download the PDF. That download PDF puts everything in one nice document all together. So it has the online application, and then it attaches any of those materials that students uploaded, whether it's the letters of recommendation, their IEP. So it puts it in one nice document, which has made it really easy for me to then share those applications with the admissions panel. So before I had like a folder with a bunch of documents in it for each student. Now it's just one document for each applicant, which has made it a lot easier to share that information. We are also able to see a little snapshot of the timeline of students and what they are working on their end. So this is just an example. This is Cassie. She is my furry friend that is looking to apply to Millersville for the fall. And we can see here that Cassie started her application before August, but in August, she started getting a few reminders saying, don't forget to submit your application. She had started it, but hadn't submitted it. So this helps us keep track of the communications that are being automatically sent out by Slate. That's nothing that I have to do on my end, but students do get reminders, finish your application. Hey, you're missing a document. Please upload this. And then once students receive their acceptance letters, that gets put in the timeline. We can see every time they log in, every time they open an email from us. So it really helps us track our students' engagement throughout the process. And then once it's time to make decisions for students that will be admitted into the program, we have this nice decision-making form that we've really worked with admissions to customize. And so it's a very easy process of just moving the student into the correct bin, whether that's admitting them, denying them, or adding them to our wait list. We've also been able, you can't see it here in this screenshot, but we've been able to customize our deny letters. Sometimes we just get applicants that do not meet the criteria for intellectual disability. Maybe they need some extra support to go to college, but we're not the right fit for them. We worked with admissions and they created a separate deny category for us that recommends these students to the services that are offered at Millersville. Things like Office of Learning Services, success coaching, other supports that exist outside of integrated studies. And it also refers them to other programs or schools in the area that may just be a better fit based on their diagnosis and support needs. So all of this was really customized to what we needed for the specific applicants that we were getting. So just some benefits of Slate, which I would say is all of it. But again, it creates that really clear checklist for students and their families to follow. There's not the guessing game anymore of, did Millersville get my documents? When did they get them? Am I missing anything? Did I remember to send them both recommendation forms, or did I only send one? So now they have that really clear checklist that they are able to keep track of. Students can also check their application status online. We always get students reaching out because they're super excited and super nervous about getting into college, asking if we've made a decision yet, what the decision is. And so now we can direct them to that portal that Joni was telling you about. And so this has just saved us a little bit of time and also given the students a sense of peace because they know where to go to check. And they could just refresh that page all day if they wanted to. But it gives them something active to do while they're in that waiting process, which we know is not fun for any applicant. All of our application materials are now in one place. That has made such a difference for the admissions panel. Again, it's just that one PDF document that can easily be shared to the panel for their review. And through this process, the recommendations are being submitted directly to us as a program instead of going through the student or their family. And we have noticed just a little bit of a difference in the recommendations that we're receiving, just more in-depth feedback, which again is not to help or hurt the applicant, but to give us a better understanding of if this student is coming to campus, what supports do we need to put in place from day one, based on someone in the student's life that knows them better than we do at this point. So it's just really good to have that information and for it to be really open and honest feedback from the recommenders. And then as Jenny was mentioning, now our students are able to receive really smooth communication from different offices on campus, whether it's orientation, housing process, financial aid. And now we are able to start working with our alumni office. So this is kind of our next step, but making sure that our alumni of the program are also receiving information from the alumni office on campus, in addition to the information that we send out through integrated studies to our alumni. So being embedded within this university system that already existed has just made a huge difference for prospective students, but also our students while they're here, making sure they receive communications and even after they graduate.
So I know this probably sounds like a lot. I promise it's not as complicated as it looks. Slate is a really fantastic tool, and nearly all college campuses that utilize a platform like Slate or some other form of a CRM, you will have an operations person that's going to be able to help you with this process. And so to the next slide, as we start to talk about how you do this work, right? I think the first piece here is that McKenna and I have a good relationship. And so McKenna and I started a conversation a little while back to just kind of talk about next steps and processes and how does this process work for your traditional populations that are already coming through this workflow, right? And so to really find your ally is really important. And so while I am not building building what McKenna is using. I am the one who is helping her with the next steps communication. We just did a really fun walkthrough just the other day to kind of say, like, here's everything that I like. Here's my tips and tricks for Slate. There's no manual to learn Slate. You just learn to click around and you find your favorite links and you find what works because every system is tailored so differently. So I do want to make that point to share that if you are looking to build something like this, it does not need to look identical to what we've done here at Millersville. It is very custom to the Ville and the needs for McKenna and her program. But in the same respect, you have the opportunity to, in a sense, piggyback off of what has already been created and to create those custom fields and prompts. I think it's also important, something here at Millersville from the day I arrived is everyone here on campus is a big supporter of the Integrated Studies program. We know these students. I get really excited, I have to admit, when I see Ashton, because I got to connect with Ashton on his way in. And so to just see his success has been exciting. And so while it hasn't always come through our department through admissions, we're all part of that process, right? Of bringing students into campus, onboarding them, making sure they'll be successful. And so really having that conversation before you jump in with your operations person to say, build me an application, really talking about the benefit of what that means for not only the workload within the office, but the experience for the student and the family. Obviously, we know this generation, more communication is good in a lot of cases. A lot of students also were kind of talking about, I was at a workshop today where we're talking about the Amazon and the Netflix generation where things are custom to you. Everybody knows you and you only get prompts that are for you. And that's what this generation is also looking for. That's all they really know, right? Is things that are custom to me. So custom, increased communication, cutting down on some of those questions, less confusion for families. And again, to McKenna's point, really kind of opening up some of those other opportunities that we may not have had time for 2 or 3 years ago because we had so many pieces that we needed to be focused on in the process that the system is now doing for us. This next slide, I actually took a screenshot to share this with McKenna. This is my view in Slate. And so while you saw McKenna's read bin and you were able to see her process, as the director of undergraduate recruitment, I get to oversee a lot of what we call the workflows. And so this is just an example of some of those workflows. And so while I am not responsible for McKenna's numbers per se, it is important for me to know how we are bringing students into the institution. And so at any time, I'm able to look to see how many students are getting their art portfolio reviewed, how many students McKenna is currently recruiting and working through the application process, how many students have been admitted and now are moving on to honors. And I do want to mention, last year, if you would have looked maybe 2 years ago, if you would have looked at this screen, you would have only seen two things. We've added not only integrated studies, we've added a music audition process, an art portfolio process, and an honors college process. So really enabling our partners across campus to be able to work succinctly within their departments for what is crucial and important to them, while also feeding the information back. A big part of this is data governance, and I don't want to bore us tonight with data governance, but it is so important for us as institutions to have very clean data, very clean reports as it relates to reporting up, reporting out, for example, and a system like this allows us to do that. For example, let's say we have a student who starts in my process, which you can see that little 10 bell first year review. Those are our undergraduate students, the number of apps I had to read that day. But you can see, for example, if a student would accidentally come into the first year review bin, but they actually belong in McKenna's bin, I can move them over and have them add a few pieces of their application rather than saying, you need to start from scratch, right? And so really that user-friendly piece as it relates to the students. College is a daunting process. The application process is always confusing at every institution. So really working to clean that up. And again, something we really kind of drilled down on this year was student type. Part of this was for reporting purposes. We are part of the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education here, otherwise known as PASHE, here in PA. And so we have a lot of reporting guidelines as we report up to the Chancellor's office in our capital. And so for that reason, it's really important for us to have as much data in one location as possible. And by changing and allowing allowing students to choose that specific student type, we're able to capture a lot of that information. On some of our other applications, for example, sometimes we run into transfer students incorrectly applying as first-year students. We actually embedded questions to double check. Are you sure? Is this you? Can you double check? And then they get to check this box that says, yes, that's me. And so really making it fun on their end, not too daunting, making sure that we get clean information and easily reportable information as well. So again, I think part of this conversation is really in the data and logistics like we're talking about now, but the bigger piece is just the experience for everybody that's involved in the process.
So for students and families, just some things to start thinking about as you move through this process. I know we've covered a lot for the admissions and university side of things, but really the goal is just to make this process as easy as possible for you when you're applying for college. And so the first thing to always think about is to start early. While we try to make this process as easy as possible, it still can be long and takes a lot of time. So starting early makes you feel a little bit calmer through the process. You're not feeling rushed, like you're trying to get everything in right at the end. So we always recommend starting to tour colleges 1 to 2 years before a student is exiting from high school. So when students think of their junior year, this is when I'm seeing a lot of students coming to Millersville. They're doing campus tours. They're coming to informational sessions. And this just allows students to figure out, is college for me? And if so, which colleges do I really like? So we always encourage our applicants to visit several schools to find the best fit. We absolutely love Millersville, but we also know Millersville is not going to be the school for everyone. If you're looking for a really urban setting, Millersville is not it. But there are other inclusive higher ed programs that do exist at urban universities. So we encourage students to look at different schools, go on campus tours, and Think College has a list of all the inclusive post-secondary education programs in the U.S., and they list all sorts of information about the program, how long it is, whether they accept federal financial aid, how inclusive the program is. So that's a good place to start narrowing down the list. I know when you log on and it says 330 something programs, it can feel really overwhelming, but taking some time to just sort through all of that information and then picking a handful of schools that are a top choice that you could go and tour in person. Also finding a way to keep track of these application deadlines and requirements. Each school is going to look a little different, especially in terms of deadlines. I know some universities have deadlines as early as November. Some are a true rolling admissions. You can apply until May. So looking at the different programs and the deadlines that they have, and finding a way to keep track of that, whether you have an Excel sheet or whether you're just jotting down notes in a notebook, but making sure that you're keeping all these moving pieces straight, and then that you're also checking all of the requirements for these schools. So now that we have a slate system, it is really easy to make sure that you've hit all of the integrated studies requirements. But there's also programs that are still working to move towards this more automated model. So you might need to do some of that tracking on your own end. So find a way that works for you to keep track of all of those moving pieces. And then just apply early. A lot of schools review applications in the order that they're received. So you want to apply early. You want to show that you're really interested in the program. A lot of these programs are pretty small and they only accept a handful of students each year. So make sure you're getting all of your documents in a timely manner so that you have a really good chance of being considered for the program. And again, just get to know all of these programs. They are all super different. Our campuses are different. The way that we offer classes and provide supports are different. Each inclusive higher ed program has a different percentage of time that's spent with students without disabilities. So ask questions and go to different events that allow you to really get to know the program, to get to know the program staff. and to get a feel for the campus. So I always recommend students are coming to these events that are happening during the academic year because you get a feel for what campus is like with other students there. When tours are done over like winter break or over the summer, it's really nice. You get to see campus, but you kind of miss out on the feel of what campus is like when it is busy and there's students out and about. And then if you're able to meet with current students in the program, students in integrated studies love to share about their college experience, to talk about all the really cool things that they've accomplished. They always have really interesting advice for prospective students. So if you find an event or a time when you're able to meet a current student, just to ask them some of your questions, they're a really great resource because they're the ones living it. They're the ones that are getting up and going to class every day, so they can really speak to their experience at the program. And then it's never too early to start getting prepared. A lot of programs require these similar documents. So most programs do require that evaluation within the last 2 to 3 years. So if you're looking to apply for school and you haven't had a psychological evaluation done recently, it might be time to start scheduling that. We know it can take a while to get in to those appointments, and the evaluations themselves are hours long. So start that process now when you're thinking about applying within the next year or so. Start gathering your references and recommendations. So think about teachers or bosses that you've worked with for a while that can really speak to your strengths, speak to your desire to go to college. And even if you're not sure which schools you want to go to yet, you can always ask them to be your reference and give them a heads up that they may be receiving some recommendation forms from different programs. And then many inclusive higher education programs work with vocational rehab or other offices and waivers and scholarships to help students fund their college experience. So start getting connected with those programs and resources now, especially vocational rehab. I can't speak to every state, but at least in Pennsylvania, our Office of Vocational Rehab provides a lot of support for students as they're looking to go to college. Some of that is funding. Some of that is also helping with their resume and looking for jobs as they're going through their college experience. All of our graduating students are encouraged to reach out to their vocational rehab counselor to start those conversations while they're still in school. So the earlier that you can get those resources set up, the easier, and the more opportunities for funding. So those are just some things to start thinking about even before you're hitting submit on those college applications. So we know that was a lot of information for you this evening. Are there any questions that we can answer?
This is Katie. I have a question. How often do you see schools with inclusive higher ed request or ask for neuropsych evals? Is that becoming more popular, or is it really case by case?
In Pennsylvania, we are a part of PIHEC, so the Pennsylvania Inclusive Higher Education Consortium. Most of the schools that are a part of PIHEC do require that documentation, especially schools that are funded by the TIPSID grant. So that are given federal funding, part of that grant requires that we are serving students with intellectual disabilities. And so some sort of proof of documentation of disability is needed to make sure that we're fulfilling the criteria for the grant.
Kind of a follow-up question to that. So, and would an IEP meet that qualification for that proof? Or is there typically, I guess is a neuropsych eval preferred?
The neuropsych eval is definitely preferred. And really that depends too on the university. So for us at Millersville, our Office of Learning Services requires an evaluation, not just the latest IEP, and they're the office that provides accommodations for any student on campus, integrated studies or degree seeking. And so it was really simpler to mirror their process as well, so that we're all asking for consistent documentation.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you again for having us. Our contact information is up on the screen, and the QR code brings you to our Integrated Studies website where you can review the admissions requirements. You can see our application process on there as well. But we are always happy to answer any questions that may pop up later. Please feel free to reach out to either one of us.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for coming and presenting today. Mary and I will hang out here a little longer if anyone has any lingering questions. And yeah, we appreciate you all showing up tonight. Thank you.